Thank you. So yeah, last presentation before lunch, always tricky, but I'll try to do my best. So FRIDa is our new dashboard project which incorporates data from Pure and other systems. Um, and FRIDa originated from a kind of pilot project that we had at the university, which was called the Research Impact Executive Dashboard, which had a lot of scary words in them. So we decided to change the acronym right away, because like impact and executive is a bit tricky if you go to researchers. So we made it a bit more friendly. So it's a collaboration between the University Groningen and the University Medical Center, because we share a Pure instance. So we have to, in any case, collaborate on this. And I'll get back to that later on how we will proceed on that. And it's part of a data-informed decision-making project. So it's the dashboards will be used primarily by university management to look at progress of research. So we aim to collect data from various sources into the management dashboard, from HR, finance, and research and education, and also PhD support, for which we have a separate application on campus. But we aim to integrate all this information. Primarily, we're already trying to put it into Pure, and that's the primary goal. But if it's not working, we can also integrate it directly into the FRIDa systems, which I will explain. And we will also take in external metrics from external systems. So the READ pilot, which was done by colleagues before our team started, it created a number of dashboards on data we already had. And then they put this out as a kind of pilot dashboard and interviewed an amazing 70 people on what they thought about it. So it was a huge undertaking, and it's a tremendous source for us to base our project on. But on the other hand, we also have some developments on campus that we also have to take into account. So for our IT department, data autonomy is becoming an important issue. So aren't we putting too much information into systems from big tech? And then we also have some activist researchers on campus who say, well, ditch Elsevier completely. So we have to navigate that as well. And then researchers will, of course, the first thing they would say if they see a dashboard, okay, is this going to increase my workload? I don't appreciate that. Managers will say, when can I have this? They see pretty pictures and they want it immediately, so they're very impatient. And our team is going, okay, how do we integrate all this information, and what about all the data quality on campus? So the survey had a lot of interesting and sometimes funny results. A big portion of people saying, I don't need this, what's it for, you're never going to make it, kind of that optimistic feedback. But the main things that we took away from it is that people, in terms of use cases, people really want insight in funding and application streams, collaboration with other organizations, and then also report automation and benchmarking. But the last two is not really what we're going to do the project for initially. And what I said, concerns are about the workload, data quality, and the need for consistent identifiers in the systems. And I was already really amazed that all those respondents see those issues themselves. So the data quality issue is not something that the team is struggling with. Everybody can see it if they're using Pure, apparently. So the project has 10 work packages. I think it's not really readable, but so we have the work packages go from setting up the infrastructure, and then work package 3 is an important one that's about the data quality. And we have a kind of cycle that we're going to implement, where the team is going to look at, okay, what kind of dashboards needs are there? Can we integrate those systems into Pure or in another way? And then look at building the dashboards for that and then delivering it to the customer. And that will be a kind of cyclic process that we're going to implement. And that's going to take, we've set it for 2 years. So we have a base architecture where We have a Azure Data Factory, so we're doing this in the cloud. We also have a kind of separate environment where we collect all the data from Pure and other systems and integrate that in the cloud. For that, we need to optimize a lot of data flowing from other systems to Pure, and maybe if that's not going to work, directly into the FRIDa system. And then one of the end results will be that we will deliver a pilot dashboard with the first graphs on it, using Power BI and Power BI embedded. We will use Power BI embedded so that we can put the dashboards immediately on websites and not having to ask people to log into Power BI and take a course on Power BI, because that's not really our focus. And so the main thing that we will deliver is a standard workflow on how to further develop a dashboard with this whole iteration on data quality and building the dashboard. But I think for the work package 3, the data quality, that will be one of the work packages that will just run for 2 years, because we have to keep improving things in Pure, and then Elsevier break things, and then we need to fix it again. And so it's a never-ending cycle, I guess. And the last thing that we also want to deliver is a fair graph, and I'll go into that later, to also deliver all the underlying data. Oh, I'm going to do that now. We were kind of inspired by OpenAir, where they have the research graph, where you can go to Zenodo and basically download a dump of all the data in the form of a graph, so you can analyze relationships within all the data, as opposed to other types of relational databases. And we also want to do the same for FRIDa, and that's to provide transparency, because we expect also that researchers will be skeptical about this project. And if there are improvement suggestions, we want to have all the data available to them so that they can look at the data themselves and maybe come up with improvement suggestions, or even reuse the data for their own research. So also for accountability and research participation, and to be open to improvements. And as I said, we're using Microsoft Azure, and they have a type of database where you can directly put in a graph. So all we need to do is, once we've integrated all the information in our systems, we can export it as a graph and make it available to download. So the basic process, if you look at business intelligence, is ETL, so extract, transform, and load. And so on the left side, you see all the sources, where Pure will be one of the primary sources, but we'll also be looking at external databases such as ORCID or RAW databases that we want to integrate. And then we load that, we use a data factory to get all the data in, put it in a data lake, and do some kind of transformations, because for the dashboards to work, we need a kind of consistent data model to analyze. And the team that's looking at the dashboards and those models, it's a separate work package where they look at what customers will need. And then we have to transfer it to 2 warehouses. So the hospital has their own data warehouse, and the university has another data warehouse. And that's where it gets complicated. So what we didn't want to do is just have both data warehouse teams, BI teams, collect all the data for us, and we keep having to send them changes. Can you get this data? So at the library, we are doing the whole, what is called operational data store, getting all the data together, creating the links. And then if we've done all that, all that the data warehouse teams need to do is load that information in their data warehouse. And that's something that the IT departments running that really had to get used to, because they were expecting to do everything themselves. But we want to do this at the library so that we have a more efficient way of looking at all the data and integrating it just one time, and then distributing it to 2 data warehouses. And then we have what you usually see is that universities already have different data marts, so that's subsets of your data warehouse. They usually already have finance and education, because that's apparently easier to do than research data marts. And so, yeah, for us it's a challenge to now also integrate a research data warehouse. And a great thing there is that we can say, okay, we're not going to put finance data regarding research into our data warehouse. If you want to compare research output with financing, that's not something that we want to do. But you could always, as a manager, compare different data marts to get those kinds of analyses. So this is the whole architecture of the data factory. So Microsoft Azure has a kind of drag and drop tooling where you can build a data factory to get all your data out of different APIs. It's really nice. It's very low code. There's not a lot of programming going on here. It's just building a system that has all the data flowing and integrating. And so it's in the slide deck, so you can look at it later. But top left is where we get all the information from outside in the data factory, and then it comes out there again to the Oracle data warehouse of the university and the Microsoft SQL system at the hospital. And so the main challenges in the data factory are that there's sometimes data coming out of the pure API, such as staff IDs, that we need all the identifiers, but I can't filter out just the staff IDs. I don't want them in the cloud because they're considered private identifiers, but it's not possible to do that. So they're coming into the cloud, and then I have to filter them out or hash them in a secure way. So that's the main challenge in Azure. How do I do that in a kind of semi-public cloud? How do I secure that flow of data? So that's the main issue there. But the great thing here is that once it's all set up, you can just export it as a script, and then basically you can run this for another university as well. All the keys that you need for APIs and external systems, they are in what's called a key vault in Azure. So you just load up the script with all this logic, you put your own keys in the key vault, and then you could reuse this system for your own university. And at the bottom, there's also a part about DevOps. We're using a DevOps methodology to implement changes requests to the dashboards that are required. And because that's also Microsoft, it's very easy to link DevOps to the Azure environment when it comes to code repositories and things like that. So as I told earlier, we have a kind of operational data store within the library where we put everything together and try to integrate it based on the persistent identifiers or other the links that we see. And you always have different choices of doing that if you have a CRIS system. So the BI teams are usually used to just getting a dump from all the corporate systems on campus and trying to match them together. But Pure is already a kind of integrator in the sense that it imports from like your HR system, finance, projects. So a lot of the integration is also being done in Pure, and it's in some cases it's the only way that it's going to be done effectively. If you look at projects, if you want to link projects to results, the best way is to create a relationship within Pure between the project and the publication. And then you would have to have the project in Pure, but also the publications. So that's where things come together. So it doesn't make sense if you look at the three alternatives. The left one doesn't make sense to just get everything independently into the ODS, because then you're missing a lot of links. And the best way is to integrate a lot of things, data already into the CRIS system, and then after that delivering it to your BI setup. And the best way would to implement a middleware system on campus, but looking at the Dutch situation, not a lot of universities implement a really good middleware solution. There's only a handful doing that. And Groningen is not yet at the hospital has a professional middleware implementation, but the university does not. So we also have to see how that will, how we merge those things together. And so yeah, we supply a central ODS. So for this integration, data quality is very important. And we want to start deduplicating data as much as possible by using open identifiers. And as most Pure users, we also have 200,000 external organizations in Pure, and nobody wants to tackle that anymore because manually it can't be done. So we're going to replace the Scopus ID with the raw ID, or at least attach also the raw ID, and using the raw database as a primary source for external organization identifiers. It's also important for the long term, because if we start filling a data warehouse with data that's coming predominantly from Elsevier systems and identifiers, if we switch to something else and we don't have that data or identifiers anymore, we need to be able to fall back on public identifiers that we can still use after that. And so, yeah, we need to also improve data quality on so that we for the external organizations, so that we can show collaboration. Traditionally, you now have the portal picture that works based on co-authorships, but we also want to look at project partners and other external organization types. And once we link with ROR, we also open up links with Wikidata, because the ROR is also in Wikidata, and then you get a real wealth of information and metadata, such as geodata, external organization structures that we can also use. With that, we also need to improve both HR systems to get ORCID into the onboarding, and improve the internal organization structure, which is also usually a struggle, because for most organizations, the HR system is the source for the organization structure, but it never really works with the matrix organization that a research organization is. So we need to convince them that there are solutions for that. Yeah, and so we need to also start loading the funding information and integrate projects, and also create awareness within the campus that different systems should be linked to each other and not compete with each other as they usually do. And as I said earlier, that will only annoy researchers, because they have to enter the same information in separate systems over and over again. So less workload. And also we need to think about, once we load all the data, what IDs are we going to use to link all this together? So I put an example here that, as I said earlier, the staff ID is the thing common in all the systems on campus, but I can't really use that in our data warehouse to expose to the outside. So I need preferably an ORCID to identify a person and link it to projects and publications and whatnot. And so we need to have like 100% ORCID coverage in the system, and not the HR ID, so that we don't have to use the HR ID. Data autonomy is also becoming an issue, as I said. We need a long-term strategy, and we've already inquired with all the sources that the pilot dashboard use. If we put this in the data warehouse, can we still use it if we don't have a subscription with you anymore? And basically all of them said yes, and just one of them said only during the subscription, but I'm not sure how that's going to work, that we will have to remove all that data from our data warehouse retrospectively, so that would be a bit strange. We could also use that data for migration purposes, exit strategies. And we would prefer to connect to sources directly, so get our own data from the APIs available, so Cordis, the national funder, that would be preferable to us. And we would like to use system-independent open identifiers. So, and then we're running into what Pure should be if you look at business intelligence and integrations. And there I'm getting a bit concerned that the functionality is going too wide and there's not enough focus on the core anymore. So what we need is an efficient distribution of all the information to integrate. But we don't need software tools that are starting to compete. So a project administration that also wants to have publication results in their system, and Pure going too far into the project administration. So we need to separate those things. And so that's why I think that Pure is mainly on campus. It's a current research information system. It should integrate all current research information and not become the Swiss Army knife of everything that has to do with research. And so that's my concern. And I really hope that the data model will be improved over the coming time. So we have a lot of internal versus external persons, organization that should improve. And with that, we also need the tooling to fix the data issues we now have. As I said, most organizations have given up on external organizations. It's just too many. You can't do that by hand anymore. So we have to do that automated in some way. And unify functionality. I just heard in the roadmap that at least the APIs are on track to be unified. And also on the BI modules, it's the same. Yeah, and so also facilitate ORCID and RAW IDs. Okay, so that's it. I'm not... It should go one further, but it's not... Oh, no, yeah. Yeah, so.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I don't know if we are just going to open for 1-2 questions. Oh, yeah. There.
Thanks, Nick. Omar from Southampton. Fantastic presentation. I'm very jealous because it looks like you guys are actually living the dream with all of this. I know it might not feel that way, but all of this looks fantastic. I have endless questions, but I'll just ask one, maybe two. So first of all, your technical team, how difficult was it to convince them to be willing to try and put all of this together? Just for context, our university, we don't even have a warehouse yet.
Yeah.
But I know even in your situation, this represents a huge investment on their part. So what was needed to kind of convince them and get their buy-in?
Well, yeah, okay. So and the BI teams as I said, at the IT departments where they're usually situated, they were kind of skeptical, but because they're used to like standard BI implementations and research is complicated. And so that's why we proposed to do the integration part ourselves. And they were very skeptical about it. We are lucky to have like 2 Azure specialists in the library, so we can do that part ourselves in the cloud, where the university IT department wants to move out of the cloud as a part of their data autonomy wish. So that's a kind of typical, but they need to. I can see that they need to get used to other departments branching out into like cloud functionality, and they have to support it and not be the directing everyone. It's the same for researchers. There's also a lot of researchers using Azure Cloud, and they just have to facilitate it and not saying, oh, you're not allowed to do that because we don't support it. That's kind of the situation that we are in. But most of the stuff, like the integration part, we're doing ourselves within the library. Yeah.